Hello folks, and welcome to the weekend warm-up with me and her and him from the inaugural Miami Grand Prix. Where do we start with this place, other than it is sweltering? It is an absolute sweatbox here, but what a place, what a track, what a city.
It's going to be a very hot, very sticky, humid weekend, but it's going to be a brilliant one. I'm so excited to be here. Everything in America is always supersized, hyped, and this is well and truly living up to that. It's going to be a brilliant, brilliant occasion. I don't think I've seen an event quite as hyped up as this one is proving to be. Certainly a Grand Prix as big as this is seeming to be, and the list of celebrities coming is about 30 pages long. I mean, it is just the event to be at this weekend.
Francis Bourgeois.
It is Francis Bourgeois. We are very excited about, but it is going to be brilliant, and I'm so interested as well in the fact it's a brand new track and we have no data and we just have onboard from the simulators, and there is so much unknown, there is so much intrigue, and the title fight is poised so perfectly as well. I'm excited. Lawrence,
you've been travelling at Grand Prix for many years. How does this compare to other new circuits that have made it onto the F1 calendar?
Well, I don't think we've been anywhere near as excited as we have been for a Grand Prix than this race. I think in terms of a venue, in terms of what they've put together, this kind of street circuit but with a permanent feel, the fact that they've taken all of the existing architecture and made it feel part of the place is pretty special. The drivers, they haven't driven it yet, but they've track walked it and they love it. It looks like a very cool racing circuit. And what I'm pleased at, what we've seen so far, is delivering on this expectation. I think everyone's so happy to be here. Everyone's loving it. It's mad busy, but it's just great fun.
This is the crazy thing, isn't it? Because when they announced this race was going to be here and through the campus and over the car parks, you automatically think back to Vegas back in the 80s and a car park track. What they did was they went out. I spoke to Clive Bowen the other day, who was the designer of the circuit. He said, we just went with a clean sheet of paper. We knew the size of the plot of land we had, and we just designed a track on that. So they've dug down as far deep as they could, laid the track around this campus here. That track is a purpose-built racetrack. Everything else, apart from the pit lane structure, the pit lane building, everything else gets packed away into warehouses on Monday. And then they rebuild the tennis courts and the music venues and everything. And they've built this thing in a couple of months because it's been the campus up until then. It's an astonishing feat of engineering what they've done here. But before we preview this weekend and how the teams may be looking, obviously we look back to Imola. You know it's coming, don't you, Lauren?
I'm scared, yeah.
That gulp.
We have to...
Lawrence is terrified.
I know.
Natalie, that you can't see, is going to time this for us. Are you ready? Lawrence Barretto,
Yes.
The race review in 60 seconds. 3, 2, 1, go.
It was a wet, it was a dry race. There was some rain, there was some sun. Max Verstappen led from pole. Checo Perez moved into second. They won the cleaner side of the grid, the less wet side of the grid. The Ferraris bogged down. Daniel Ricciardo hit Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc fell back. He then fought his way back up. Then he spun, so he fell back again. And then he fought his way back up to 6th. So he got some points out of it. Lando Norris back on the podium. Red Bull 1-2 for the first time in a long time. 2016, I think, was the last time it was there. And some other things happened.
What other things happened? You've got time.
Well, I've got time. Okay. Great race for George Russell. Like, really strong afternoon for him. Tougher afternoon for Lewis Hamilton. Once again, the safety car just didn't play into his favour. I feel for Lewis. There's been a couple of races this year. It's not gone quite well for him. Elsewhere, really tight. Unfortunate for Alex Albon. Could have got points. Just missed out.
No, stop. That's it. You should have stopped. You should have stopped earlier, mate. Right, so to Miami. First time that Formula One has been in Florida since 1959, when the inaugural US Grand Prix took place at Sebring. But who do we think will be competitive here, Mr. Barretto? Red Bull have got a couple of little upgrades this weekend.
I think generally this track should suit the Red Bull, mostly because it's got 3 long straights. And they've been in that area, top speed, they've been very, very strong this year. So I think Max, Checo, wants to be. Max is driving without any pressure, loving it since he's become world champion. And you've got a Checo who's driving at a higher level than I've ever seen in Formula One, and he's starting to kind of push Max in that qualifying and race pace, both in those instances. And I think if Red Bull can continue to get these 1-2s, they're going to be competitive on all fronts this year.
Ferrari will be hoping that they won't be, though.
Absolutely, and it was a near perfect weekend in Imola, wasn't it? 58 out of 59 points scored, as you say. Checo beginning to push Max with a Grand Slam, a perfect weekend for Max Verstappen. So Ferrari will be feeling the pressure from them, given that, of course, Carlos Sainz a DNF and Charles Leclerc with that mistake as well, him saying that he just got that little bit too greedy, which, yes, he can afford to do at this part of the season, but we don't want to come to the end of the season, and to be looking back to Imola going, what if?
We've seen Charles make little mistakes before. He very rarely makes the same mistake twice.
Exactly. So he could very well step up here, put that behind him. You know, he's in this title fight now with Max Verstappen, and he has this lead, this seemingly insurmountable lead at the moment as well.
I mean, it's early.
It's
early days.
It's a long
early
season,
days.
as everyone was saying last time out. It is early days, but indeed Ferrari really will be looking to bounce back from Imola here in Miami.
And again, a few small upgrades for Ferrari this weekend. It's not the big upgrade package that we were expecting. I think that's going to come online maybe in Barcelona, but just a couple of low downforce trims for them here.
Yeah, Ferrari have stuck to their plan. I think they wanted to introduce their package in Europe. Makes more sense logistically. But they've had a car really from a baseline level that they've understood very well. Big weekend, I think, for Carlos Sainz. He's had these two really difficult races. One of them wasn't his fault. So I think if he can react well to that and he can kind of fight back quickly, otherwise, I think there is a danger that this kind of starts to spiral.
Now, we are, of course, in Miami for the first time. There was a big party last night to kick off the event here in Miami. We all went along. It was a great night, huge party. And backstage, before it all started, Lawrence had a chance to sit down with the Formula One world champion, Max Verstappen.
Max, it looks like you've done some pretty cool things in Miami since you've been here. You went to a swamp and been throwing some catches or throwing some balls, should we say, at the Marlins, with the Marlins to the baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it's of course a bit of a content capture you have to do, but it was really cool. Really nice experiences, which you normally don't really have the time for. So when you're around here, I'm happy to do that.
I know that it's all about the racing for you, but is it quite cool to come to an event like this? You get to do some cool stuff like that. It's a pretty cool city as well.
Yeah, well, of course, I mean, I'm focused on the race week, and that's still the most important, right? But I'm excited. I think everyone is excited to be here, and we're just looking forward now to get started.
What do you make of the place? What do you make of the track so far?
I haven't seen the track yet. I've only driven it on the simulator, but it looks all right. I mean, I'm just looking forward to actually driving in real life and see how it feels like, how the grip is like. So.
Max Verstappen there, and I think as we've all just said and agreed, Red Bull could be looking quite strong here this weekend. How, though, will Mercedes fare? Because it has not been the perfect start to the season. Toto Wolff, after Imola, apologising to Lewis Hamilton for the car that he has to endure. Hello, chap.
Hello, Charles.
Championship leader. No apologies, though, for George. No apologies seemingly needed for George. Consistent, top 5 finish in every race this year.
It genuinely couldn't have gone any better for him, his new start to life at Mercedes. He stepped in for them in Bahrain, that one-off, and we all thought, okay, one-off, no pressure, but he's come in with Lewis Hamilton in the other car, and he's delivered every single weekend, and he's getting the points out of a car that, as you've mentioned, Will, is really struggling. So, yeah, I'm super impressed by him.
How much, though, is this down to Mercedes experimenting on Lewis's side of the garage? We know they had running a whole brace of sensors on Lewis's car in Imola, trying to understand things. Do we think Lewis is carrying the burden for the team of trying to understand that car and move them forward?
I think that's one theory that people are talking about post Imola, and it's a probable one as well. I think there's also an element, perhaps a question, that George had to wrestle that Williams around for a number of years. He knows, therefore, how to drive a car that is, to quote Toto Wolff, undrivable. Whether his car is as undrivable as Lewis Hamilton's is remains to be seen. Of course, there's so much going on back in Brackley and here in the garage as well, within Mercedes. But that's what we'll have to wait and see, whether actually it's a case of George knows how to drive a bad car a bit better. It's a theory. I'm not saying it's what I think, it's a theory that is out there.
Mercedes, of course, all of the data, all of the information from Imola and the opening 4 races back at Brackley, they've been running tons of simulations. They do have some upgrades this weekend, rear wing, front wing, some other things on the car as well, smaller bits which we'll know about throughout this weekend. And really, it's a pivotal weekend for them. If these upgrades work, then they know the direction they have to go in. If these upgrades don't work, it's very much a case of back to the drawing board for Mercedes. That is how pivotal this Miami weekend is for Mercedes with those upgrades on the car. If they work, great, we've got the direction. If they don't, it's more head scratching. McLaren, though, similarly Mercedes-powered team, started off the season in a similar position to the factory team, but have really turned it around. Back on the podium in Imola. I mean, what a What a revolution.
I think there's an element of surprise within the team at just how quickly they've turned things around. They were lost in Bahrain when they were having those brake problems and the issues with the brake ducts. But like you said, they've got very good, efficient people working that team. They've made a reasonably good car, very good over the last couple of years. So it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that once they've got to the bottom of what the problem is, they've managed to turn things around. There was so much optimism pre-season from the team internally that they had a good car, and now it's actually starting to come through.
This is it, because for 2 years it's all been positive at McLaren. So it's the first period where they're really struggling because they haven't taken that step forward, and to see them come through it and how they've dealt with it, I think it's been amazing. But arriving here in Miami, these are the guys who want to be seen as America's Formula One team. You know, yes. Zach Brown has actually said that. We want to be seen as the North American Formula One team. Everything around this team this weekend is about promoting Miami and America. We've got the drivers with special helmets. I know Lando was showing everyone his helmet this morning. You couldn't wait to give it a bit of a rub, could you?
I mean, have just touched Lando's helmet.
It looks like a basketball.
It is amazing. There's even knobbly bits on it as well, like a basketball texture.
Amazing.
Incredible.
Great stuff. So shall we hear from...
we should move this along quickly.
McLaren and Mercedes drivers, Lando Norris and George Russell.
George, how much are you enjoying Miami so far?
Yeah, it's cool. I like the vibe. It's a bit different to...
Is the basketball good?
Basketball's good. I liked it. Had a heat on Monday, courtside. It was a bit daunting when they're like, you just sat there and they're like throwing the ball right towards you, like, oh, I hope I catch it. Like,
I would have loved to see it.
I was kind of always a bit ready to like...
Get out the way?
Yeah, get out the way. But no, it's impressive. I don't know, when you always see like top level people do their thing, it's
cool, huh?
Yeah, it's cool. I like it.
Any good at basketball yourself?
Well, we did this thing in Austin, didn't we, last year? We had like 10 free throws.
He can dunk it because of his height, you know. He can
I actually did some today. I had an event with Puma and I did some today. And I got a couple in, so that was...
Out of how many? 2?
No, I'd say I got about a 10%. 10% was sort of my ratio. So, I mean, it was better than last time I went. So, I liked it. I don't know, they just do things differently over here, don't they? But it's so hyped for everything. I like it.
It's good.
Yeah, it's cool. That's what I mean.
And the food's amazing. I
Food is
massive juicy burger earlier.
You can afford it. I can afford to put on the weight. Slim Jim over here.
What do you weigh?
I'm 73 kilos.
What do you mean you can't afford it?
Because I'm 6'2", you're...
Yeah, but you're 70, I weigh 70, I weigh 3 kilos less.
Yes, so you can afford it. You can afford...
You can afford it?
I can't afford it, because if I put it on and I'm like 75 and I'm overweight.
Your seat's 5 kilos?
No, that's me bare in the morning.
Oh, bare, okay.
That's me bare, that's not me with
well,
my
hang on,
seat.
what, are you not bare when you're weighing yourself, Lando?
Well, when you drive race cars, you have to weigh yourself with the race gear on.
Lando goes to sleep in his race suit, so that's all he knows. He doesn't...
And your helmet.
And sometimes my helmet. Depends if it's cold or warm. So.
Those guys. Right, let's move to Alpine now, because they had the new floor, Lawrence, in Imola. They didn't, well, from one car anyway, for Fernando's car, they didn't really get to run it much because he retired from the race fairly early on, and obviously it was a weekend with such different weather conditions, but they've learnt enough with it to put it on Esteban's car this weekend as well. They think it's a good step forward.
Yeah, and I think that's great for Esteban because he's had such a strong start to the season. He's probably one of only a few drivers who've scored in the majority of races this year, so it's good that he's getting those new parts.
Yeah.
Alpine have been really impressive for me this year because they've seemed to be putting bits on and they seem to be correlating with what the wind tunnel's saying, and that's the team that doesn't always happen to. They've kind of pushed themselves up to the midfield, having been nowhere in testing, or at least we didn't quite know where they were in testing. And I think Fernando's just getting a bit frustrated now that they're not putting that kind of performance and the developments that they got into cold, hard points.
That's the issue. I was talking to Otmar yesterday, who incidentally is the smiliest Otmar that I've seen in many, many years. And he said, our frustration at the moment is we got a great car, we just don't, as Lawrence was saying, we don't have the points that reflect where we think we should be, given how good our car really is.
And Fernando Alonso echoing that as well, with just 2 points from what has been an incredibly fast car and great driving from him as well. And they should be getting more out of that. They should be getting more points. It's a bit of luck, I suppose, isn't it? Certainly in Imola, with Mick Schumacher, of course, tangling with Fernando Alonso and seeing him out the race very early on. But maybe Miami here, like you say, a new floor on Esteban's car as well. He can get on top of that, and they can begin to get some of the points that I think the driving and the car deserves.
AlphaTauri now, and again, a team stuck in that midfield battle. Can they break their way up? do we think, within that battle in the midfield?
I think it was a brilliant drive for Yuki, from Yuki in Imola. I think he was superb.
Yep.
To come through and drive in the manner that he did. And also from Pierre Gasly as well, of course. He held off Lewis Hamilton and held him off for some time. So yes, I think so. I think there are certainly promising signs. Once again, though, it's a case of just beginning to get the consistency and a good run of momentum in that car.
Yuki saying he didn't have a clue last year. He can admit that. He can admit that he didn't know what he was doing.
I love that honesty.
But you can see now that turnaround, that form in Imola was sensational.
Yeah, he's a lot more relaxed now. I think last year was that learning phase. He was very nervous, I think, about what he was doing, about making the wrong decisions, making the wrong mistake, making big mistakes. This year, we've got a new Yuki. I think Franz's tutelage over the winter, him living at the factories really helped. I just hope that they can get that car to a point where they understand it, because we've got used to AlphaTauri making the most out of the package year in, year out, and this year they don't seem to quite have a handle on it at the moment.
Part and parcel of Yuki being so good, of course, is this relationship he has with Pierre, how Pierre is helping to draw so much out of Yuki. You caught up with Pierre Gasly earlier today. Not so much to talk about Yuki in the relationship, more to talk about this new track here in Miami. You're going to hear from Lawrence and Pierre now. If you want to watch more of this, why don't you tune into the pre-race show on F1 TV? Nice segue there. Before the race on Sunday afternoon.
Welcome to Miami Gardens, home to the newest race on the Formula One calendar. And who better to join me on this track walk than Pierre Gasly, who've just completed your own track walk with the engineers. How was it?
It was hot. It was really hot. But yeah, what a place, what a track. I had the chance to come in January to have a first look at it, but now it looks fully ready and yeah, insanely fast. I think it's gonna be pretty challenging, but yeah, it looks amazing.
There's 3 straights on this track. The first one heading into turn 1. What do you think the start's going to be like, that run down into that right-hander?
I think this is going to be quite interesting because the track is very wide generally. And then you've got a lot of section, like chicane. So I'm already like trying to think ahead of the race, you know, like a fighting situation, racing situations, potential overtakings. You can dive bomb quite hard in there because the next one is a left corner. So even you go wide, you'll have the inside line for the second corner. So I mean, it's going to be very interesting, and all these long straights, I think we're going to have to play some games with DRS if you don't want to be over, like, I think you could see guys overtaking back even without the DRS once they get past, so yeah, we'll have to be quite smart with that.
Now in Imola, Aston Martin got over what was a difficult start to the season for them. They were the only team that hadn't scored points up to that point, but a double point score, a pretty good turnaround for them there.
Yeah, huge for a couple of reasons. Sebastian had a really tough start to the year, and it was impressive that he had the stronger weekend overall. For Lance, he's kind of been there or thereabouts and just hadn't managed to get points. So for different reasons, good for the team. Mike Crack coming in, team principal, finally get some points on the board. I think what that team needed was a good weekend, and I think they can really bounce off from that, maybe here in Miami.
But it's so tightly congested in that midfield pack, and Aston Martin, I think we can all agree, still don't look like they're completely on top of their problems. They've got developments, upgrades in the pipeline, but it's still going to be a hard time for them.
It is going to be tough for them, absolutely. There was a real sense of relief, though, I think, in Imola. I spoke to Sebastian Vettel on the post-race show, and I think he actually said to me, I'm going to celebrate this like it's a win, because for the team it does feel like one. And that's lovely to hear in the moment, but actually sort of ominous to hear looking ahead that, you know, 1 point or a couple of points for them from one race, it feels like a victory.
Shows how far expectations have dropped down there at Aston Martin. Let's move to Alfa Romeo, a team that started off the season so well, looking so competitive. Valtteri, I thought, had another blinding race in Imola.
Yeah, I don't know what we're on. Valtteri 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, who knows where we are with it.
I think it's Valtteri V1, really, like in terms of the best version of Valtteri.
This is the best Valtteri Bottas I think we've ever seen, like you say, and I think this is what Alfa Romeo wanted. They wanted our top-line driver to come in, bring a team that has operated efficiently for many years, make the most of a good car, and that's what he's done year in, year, weekend in, weekend out, especially in qualifying. I think he's been particularly impressive.
He's always been strong in qualifying.
But I think here with, you know, Joe in the other car as well, he's kind of bringing him through. Joe was saying, oh, it's great to have Valtteri there. He's asking lots of questions of himself. That pairing's working really well. Fred, always a happy guy, even happier this year around, joking around. I think there's a really nice vibe in that team, and they're going to be there or thereabouts all year because they've got this car that's really refined. It's very detailed. They spend a lot of time in the wind tunnel because they've got a lot of extra wind tunnel time versus the rest of the teams on the sliding scale, and they've made the most off that car.
Another team who, I mean, we were talking about Aston Martin that hadn't scored points, only a driver left in the sport that hasn't scored points, well, 2 of them at the moment. Latifi at Williams, we'll come to them in a minute, but also Mick Schumacher at Haas. He's had a difficult start to the year, especially coming up against Kevin Magnussen, who has just taken to Formula One again, so superbly.
He's one of the best news stories, isn't he, of 2022, and certainly the Formula One season. It's brilliant to see Kevin take so easily once again to that car and come back in and be fighting for points and in the midst, and of course with that brilliant P4 in Quali in Imola. I do think it's a good thing for Mick though, in a sense, because he can learn from Kevin, and I know I've spoken to the guys within the team and they've said that similarly to Zhou, Mick is asking loads of questions. Kevin's happy to share that knowledge. They're all trying to get this car up to the level it needs to be at the front of the midfield, fighting for those points. And Mick and Kevin can work together on that. So, yes, it's pressure, but Mick also then has a benchmark to work toward as well.
We'll move to Williams now. They have points on the boards. It's been a good start to the season for them in that regard, but they are aware they are the 10th fastest team in Formula One at the moment. They have a mountain to climb.
Yeah, I think they are still hurting from the fact that they were one of the only team not to have a full car to test these 2020-22 Pirelli spec tyres. And I think it's going to take them a fair few races into this season to kind of make up from the lack of knowledge that they could have got from those. But you're seeing Alex kind of deliver the kind of performances that I think we knew he always could do, could never really deliver them under the pressure cooker at Red Bull. And he's come to Williams, a really family-oriented team, and it's getting the very best out of him. And Yost has said many times, he's getting more out of that car than he should be. Nicky is struggling, and I feel for him because I talked to him in the pen weekend in, weekend out, and he just doesn't have any answers for why he's struggling so much. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? He said he needs to raise his level to be on the same form as Alex Albon, and it's Albon who's had a year out of the sport. It's Albon who's the new guy at the team, and it's Latifi who's struggling by comparison. Laura, you did sit down with Alex Albon earlier today, so why don't we hear a little bit from Laura and Alex.
Could you ever have prepared yourself for just how the US has taken Formula One into its heart?
Yeah, no, but then I again at the same point, I guess I'm not surprised because obviously America, we know they do it big, and I think coming here, I don't know a race that I've ever been to that's been hyped up as big as this. It really feels like, everyone's going 110%. Everyone has a livery or a helmet or whatever.
New hair for you?
I do. Yeah, exactly. And it's exciting because it feels like F1's doing great, truthfully speaking, and to see this boom and to see how much people are getting involved in Formula One. Of course, being a driver and someone who loves the sport, I love to see it flourish.
And how much do you know of the track as well? And certainly, do you think it can give teams like Williams some opportunities here for overtaking? Exactly.
So it is a new circuit, which always opens up opportunities for the fact that it's so unknown. So, when we still have 3 practice sessions, so you would think people would figure it out, but it's not that simple. And when you go to a new circuit, you've got to be on top of it straight away. The setup has to be good, the driving has to be good. We do a lot of simulator work to try and reduce the learning process of it all, but you can get it wrong. And hopefully we're the ones that get it right, and then we don't have the time that, the learning process, and we can hit the ground running and score some points.
Lovely to hear from Alex Albon there, talking to Laura, which brings us to round out the show, as we always do with our predictions, for the inaugural Miami GP. Shall I start with you, Laura, or Lawrence? Who wants to take it first?
I think Lawrence should absolutely go.
You haven't chosen yours yet, have you? That's it.
Lawrence, after you.
Okay, I'll go Checo, Max, Lewis.
For what reason?
I think Red Bull are going to be really strong here, and I'm hoping that Mercedes have found some solutions to the problem they're having. Not that they're going to cure them, but just that I think find some solutions to move a little bit further up.
Okay, Laura?
I'm going to say Max, Carlos Sainz, and George Russell.
Nice. I'm agreeing
with
both of you. I do think it's going to be a Red Bull weekend. I think those long straights, the long DRS zones are really going to suit them. I'm going to go Checo pole, Checo win.
Ooh, spicy.
I would like to see Carlos on the podium after his 2 bad weekends, and I'm going to put Lando back on the podium as well. So, yes. Tune in over the course of the weekend to find out just how wrong we all are. Thanks so much for tuning in, folks. Enjoy this inaugural weekend here in Miami. But for now, from the 3 of us, that is your lot.